All right. Welcome back, everyone. We're ready for another deep dive. And this one's going to be a little different.
Yeah, a little more every day.
Right, exactly. We're zooming in on something you've all heard, probably even said a million times, just a regular old breakfast convo between a mom and her kid.
The kind of thing that just blends into the background noise.
Totally. But that's the beauty of it, right? This super ordinary, almost invisible interaction. Well, it actually tells us a ton about families, culture, even the power of language itself.
A lot packed into a few sentences.
So much. And that's what we're going to unpack today. Our source material is this little snippet of conversation. And honestly, just reading it, it's like, bam. You're right there at the breakfast table. Mom's all, did you pack your lunch? Permission slip. Don't forget your jacket. It's raining. Like classic mom stuff.
Instant recognition, right. We've either lived it or heard it countless times.
Exactly. But here's where it gets interesting. These few phrases, they're not just about remembering stuff. They're kind of like a window into this family's whole routine.
Yeah.
Like, what does this tell us about their mornings, about their roles?
Well, right away you see this dynamic between the caretaker, the mom, and the one being cared for, the kid, probably school-aged, right? And it speaks volumes about those unspoken agreements we have in families, the expectations.
Oh, totally. Like, just in those few words, we already assume Lucas is going to school, that he needs a permission slip for something. Like, these aren't things they're discussing, but they're both on the same page.
It's the shared context that's so fascinating. These basic little exchanges reveal the bigger picture of their lives, the cultural norms they operate within, like
Mm.
who's responsible for what, what's considered important enough to remind about. Even something like the jacket. It's not just about remembering, it's about care.
Yeah. That don't forget your jacket, it's raining.
Yeah.
There's like a whole layer of mom love woven in there.
Absolutely. It's that blend of practical instruction with emotional concern that you often see, particularly from mothers. It's making sure the child is prepared, safe, and cared for.
Totally. And it reminds me of something I read about, what was it called? Scaffolding. Where like as kids grow, parents gradually give them more responsibility, but at first they need these reminders and support.
Exactly. That's a perfect example of it. Even in this tiny snippet, we're seeing a glimpse of that process, the parent guiding, reminding, and slowly letting go as the child becomes more independent.
And speaking of independence, we can't forget Lucas's part in this whole thing. That relax, mom. I mean, how many times have we all said or heard that?
Oh, the classic teenage response.
Right. But is it just teenage rebellion or is there something more to it?
Well, I think it's definitely a sign of that push for autonomy, right? Teens are trying to carve out their own space, test their boundaries. But the way Lucas phrases it, it's not harsh, it's almost playful, almost affectionate.
Yeah. It's like he knows she cares, even if he's rolling his eyes a little.
Exactly. And that points to the underlying bond they have. It's not disrespect, it's a comfortable back and forth that comes with knowing each other well. And there's research on how teens communicate differently with moms versus dads. Like with moms, it's often more informal, more emotionally charged.
Oh, that's interesting. So maybe that's why his response is so casual. Like he feels safe expressing himself that way with his mom.
It's definitely possible. And this whole conversation just shows how much we can learn from observing these everyday interactions, right? It's like a microcosm of the whole parent-child relationship.
Totally. I bet our listeners are already thinking back to their own childhoods, right?
Yeah.
Like, were you the mom in this scenario, all worried about permission slips and jackets,
Mhm.
or were you the one groaning, relax?
We all have those memories. Whether we were giving the reminders or receiving them, those little moments shape how we see family, how we communicate, even as adults.
It's amazing how these tiny pieces of conversation can hold so much meaning. And I think that's a great takeaway, right?
It really is. This seemingly mundane breakfast conversation reveals so much about family dynamics, cultural norms, and the stages of life we go through. It shows the power of listening closely, not just to the words, but to the unspoken messages that are always there.
Absolutely. And it leaves me wondering, what if we brought that same level of attention to all our conversations? What hidden depths would we discover in our everyday interactions?
Food for thought, isn't it? It's like turning the ordinary into something extraordinary simply by paying attention, by listening deeply.
And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder those deep thoughts. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time.
Until then.